If slow burn Christmas stories about a broke single mom, her brave little girl, and a grieving CEO warmed back to life move you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next cinematic story on this channel. The radiators had given up sometime after midnight. By 2 in the morning, the tiny apartment on Maple Street felt more like the inside of a snow globe than a home. Tessa Clark sat at the wobbly kitchen table with a stack of bills spread out in front of her. The lamp above cast a weak yellow circle over final notice stamps in numbers she'd already added up 3 times. The math didn't change. The gas bill, 2 months behind. The rent, overdue and threatening further action. And somewhere at the bottom of the pile, a letter from the management company, Harding Property Group, printed in the kind of crisp, cold font that never had to think about winter. She rubbed her eyes. Across the room, the couch was a dark mound. Under a chipped snowman blanket, her daughter's small shape had curled into a comma. Maddie's toes poked out, covered in mismatched socks with cartoon reindeer rubbed almost white at the heels. Tessa looked at the overdue gas bill again. "What do you want me to do?" she whispered to it. It didn't answer. She rested her forehead on her arms. Just for a minute, just to feel the weight of something that wasn't numbers. Sleep slid over her like a thin sheet. The room ticked and sighed around her. Maddie watched her from the couch. The 6-year-old had woken to the sound of paper shuffling, the way she sometimes woke to the quiet sound of her mother crying. Tonight, there were no tears, just the slow, heavy breathing of someone too tired to even manage that. Careful not to jostle her blanket, Maddie slipped down, her bare feet whispering against the cold floor. She padded to the table, lips pressed to Mithen. Her mother's face looked different when she was asleep. Softer, younger. The line between her eyebrows, the one that had been there more days than not lately, had smoothed out. Maddie reached up and tugged the snowman blanket from the couch, draping it over Tessa's shoulders. Her mother murmured something in her sleep and leaned into the warmth. Maddie's heart squeezed. She climbed onto a chair, knees tucking under her, and pulled a scrap of paper from the corner of the table. Her teacher at school had told the class if you write to Santa and put it in the mail, it would find its way. She had seen the big glass building downtown, the one with the corner office that kept its lights on late. Her mom said the owner of that building owned almost everything in town. If anyone knew Santa, it would be the man in the corner office. Maddie picked up a pen. Her tongue stuck out of the corner of her mouth as she wrote, slowly and carefully. "Dear Santa in the corner office with the big glass window, my name is Maddie. I am 6. I don't want toys this year. I just want a warm house where my mom can stop crying and where her feet aren't always cold. She works all the time. She is very good. Her name is Tessa. We live in the old brick building across from your shiny one. Our heat is broken and Mom says we might have to move if we can't pay everything. Can you please help my mom not be so sad? Love, Maddie." She added a drawing at the bottom, a square for their building, another taller rectangle for the glass one, a tiny stick figure with a crooked smile waving from the top corner. She folded the paper carefully. In the kitchen drawer, she found an envelope, the kind her mom used for job applications. On the front, in big block letters, she wrote, "Santa at the corner office, Harding Property Group Building, Town Square." It wasn't an address like the kind on the grown-up envelopes, but she figured Santa would know. The clock above the stove said 2:23. She didn't dare go outside alone at night. But Mrs. Patel, who ran the coin laundry 2 floors down, left early to prep the machines, and sometimes they heard the clank of her keys before dawn. Maddie crept to the apartment door, cracked it open, listened. Footsteps on the stairs, the soft hum of someone humming. She sprinted down, envelope clutched tight. Mrs. Patel turned, eyes widening. "Maddie," she whispered. "What are you doing up, sweet pea?" Maddie held out the envelope. "Can you please mail this?" she asked. "It's for Santa, but not the North Pole one, the one in the big office." Mrs. Patel squinted at the writing and then smiled sadly. "I'll make sure it goes where it needs to," she said. "Thank you," Maddie said. She ran back upstairs. When Tessa woke an hour later with a blanket around her shoulders and the lamp still on, she had no idea that a letter she hadn't written had already begun to change the shape of their winter. On the other side of town, in the big glass building Maddie had drawn from memory, The corner office was lit like a lantern against the snow. Miles Harding leaned his palms on the window ledge and watched the flakes tumble through the cones of streetlights. The town looked almost picturesque from up here. Strings of white lights wrapped around lampposts. A Christmas tree glowed in the square, a crooked star on top. Cars crawled along Main Street, tires hissing over slush. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. Dark suit, loosened tie, prematurely gray at the temples. He looked like the before photo in a magazine spread about stress. Behind him, someone cleared their throat. "Sir." He turned. His assistant, Lena, stood in the doorway clutching a stack of mail. "Sorry to bother you," she said. "This came in with the corporate holiday cards. I thought you might want to see it." She held out a small white envelope. There was no return address. Just the scrawled words, "Santa at the corner office, Harding Property Group building." Miles took it. "Incoming letters to Santa," he said dryly. "We've made it, Lena." She smiled faintly. "I think this one was dropped off at the lobby box," she said. "It got mixed in with the community outreach stuff." He slid a finger under the flap. The paper inside was folded twice. He unfolded it. The handwriting was large and careful, the lines slightly wavering. He read it once through, fast, then again, slower, the words sinking in. "Dear Santa in the corner office with the big glass window, I just want a warm house where my mom can stop crying. A warm house, feet that weren't always cold." He could picture it too easily. A cramped apartment, an old radiator, someone tracing the edges of an overdue notice with numb fingers. He swallowed. "Who sent this?" he asked. "There's no name on the outside," Lena said. "No formal address. Just that." He flipped the paper over. At the bottom, beside the signature, there was a drawing. 2 rectangles. Tiny stick figures. A little arrow pointed at one box, me and Mom. Another arrow to the tall one, you. He turned back to the window. Across the square, beyond the tree and the neat rows of parked cars, he could see the tops of the old brick buildings on Maple Street. One of those windows was probably taped up against drafts with newspaper, maybe stuffed with towels, maybe holding in the breath of a woman who thought she'd have to move again. He closed his eyes. Behind them, another image rose, uninvited. Renee, sitting cross-legged on their old sofa, knitting needles clicking gently. The half-finished sleeve of a yellow baby sweater pulled in her lap. "Do you think she'll like it?" Renee had asked. "We don't even know if it's a she," Miles had said. "She," Renee had replied with certainty. "The agency said curls. I can feel it." She'd pressed the soft yarn to her cheek. "She's going to look like sunshine in this." The memory twisted. The adoption agency's email. The one that had used words like unfortunate and impossible and reassign. Then the hospital room, machines and beeps in Renee's hand, light and dry in his. He'd packed the sweater away somewhere after she was gone. He hadn't wanted to see it. Now, he walked to the built-in cabinets lining one wall of his office. His fingers skimmed folders, binders, the detritus of a life spent making other people's roofs solid. In the back of the lowest shelf, under an old portfolio, his hand brushed something soft. He pulled it out. The yarn was the color of egg yolks. One sleeve was finished, the other hung off the needle. Stitches frozen mid-row. He sat down with it. The office, always so full of motion and noise, went very quiet. He rested his forehead against the sweater and let his shoulders shake. For the first time in 3 years, the tears didn't stop at the rim of his eyes and retreat. They fell. He didn't sob, didn't make a sound. They just slid down, drop after drop, onto yellow wool and pale hands. Outside, snow softened the outlines of things. Inside, something sharp inside his chest finally, mercifully, cracked. The board meeting the next morning smelled of coffee and tension. Half a dozen directors sat around the long table, their faces lit by a screen at the far end. Projected across it was a photo of the Maple Street complex. Brickwork, soot-stained, windows clouded, a sagging awning over the main entrance. "Maple Street is a drag," Caldwell said. He didn't mean the neighborhood. He meant the line on the spreadsheet. He tapped his pen on the table, his signet ring clicking. Maintenance costs have outstripped rental income 3 years in a row, he went on. We're pouring money into a sieve. The offer from Northbridge Developments is more than fair. He clicked his remote. The slide changed to glossy renderings, glass towers, rooftop pools, the kind of lifestyle photography where nobody ever wore a coat. We sell, Caldwell said. They knock it down. We reinvest in profitable assets. That's what your wife wanted. Miles. Growth. Stability. No dead weight. He always invoked Renee like a blessing and a weapon. Miles's jaw clenched. We're not talking about dead weight, he said. We're talking about families. 62 units. Kids. Seniors. We're talking about 62 units the city will have to relocate, another board member said. Harding can't be the only safety net in town. We're a property group, not a charity. Miles thought of the letter in his desk drawer. I just want a warm house where my mom can stop crying. He'd slept with the words circling his brain. So we sell, Caldwell said again, before the boilers give out completely and the city starts fining us. Lena sat at the edge of the room, taking notes, eyes flicking to Miles now and then. He heard himself say, I want to see it again. You have the reports, Caldwell said. Inspections? Photos. I want to see the people, Miles replied. Before we vote on anything. Caldwell exhaled through his nose. You can see them just fine from your window, he said. While you're up here weighing the good of the company. Miles's gaze hardened. I'll schedule a site visit, he said. Caldwell shook his head slightly, but didn't stop him. Fine, he said. Just don't let sentimentality ruin your judgment. Sentimentality. The word sat sour on Miles' tongue. He stood. Meeting adjourned, he said. We'll reconvene next week. The Maple Street building looked worse up close. The lobby smelled of stale air and laundry detergent. The radiator under the mailboxes rattled half-heartedly, then fell still. A maintenance worker named Carlos met Miles in the hallway, wiping his hands on a rag. Sorry about the mess. Mr. Harding, he said, nodding at a bucket catching a slow drip from the ceiling. Snowmelt's getting in somewhere. Roof's patchy. Miles had told Lena to put him down as Miles from management on the site visit log. He didn't put on a hard hat or a suit, just a wool coat and a knit cap that made him look, he hoped, like someone who knew his way around a furnace. Show me the worst of it, Miles said. Carlos snorted a laugh. Where do you want to start, he asked. Fourth floor's got that busted radiator in 4C. Single mom. Kid. I've been begging for a replacement part since October. Let's start there, Miles said. They climbed the stairs. Halfway between the third and fourth floors, Miles paused. The air felt colder. Each breath steamed in front of his face. Carlos knocked on 4C. There was a shuffle inside, then the sound of chains being unhooked. The door opened a crack. A woman peered out. She had dark hair pulled into a messy knot and eyes that looked like they carried half the town's worries. Yes, she said. Morning, Carlos said. Brought someone from management to look at your heat. The woman's gaze flicked to Miles, then back to Carlos. About time, she muttered, then sighed. Come in. It's colder in here than out there. She swung the door open. The apartment was small, a couch pushed against one wall, an old TV across from it, a galley kitchen to the side. A little girl in a faded blue pajama top peeked around the corner, blanket draped over her shoulders like a superhero cape. She had a mop of blonde curls and serious eyes. For a moment, she and Miles just looked at each other. Recognition hit him like a physical thing. Not because she looked like anyone he'd known, because he recognized the crayon drawing from the bottom of the letter in the way she held her shoulders, as if ready to run forward or backward at the first sign of danger. Hi, she said. Are you here to fix the hot? I hope so, Miles said. His voice came out softer than usual. We'll do what we can, Carlos added, already kneeling by the radiator under the window. The metal was dead cold. Tessa folded her arms. I've called 3 times, she said. I thought management forgot we live here. We didn't forget, Miles said. We're behind. Behind, she repeated. That's one word for it. She wore a sweater 2 sizes too big over a t-shirt, sleeves pulled down over her hands. He could see her breath when she spoke. Do you have somewhere else you can go? He asked carefully. Friend's family. She laughed once, short and without humor. No, she said, it's just us. Maddie, she added when the girl tugged her sleeve, go put on socks, please. The ones without holes. Maddie scowled affectionately and retreated. Carlos fiddled with the valve, swore under his breath, then looked up. The boiler down in the basement's on its last legs, he said. I can bleed the line, but without a new pump, nothing's getting up here, no matter how nice we ask. How long to get a new pump? Miles asked. Depends how much yelling procurement needs, Carlos said. Consider them yelled at, Miles said. He pulled his phone out, thumb flying across the screen. Tessa watched him. Who are you? Exactly, she asked. You don't look like the usual guy they send to tell us to be patient. Miles, he said. He hesitated, then added, facilities. Sort of. She narrowed her eyes. When you say sort of, does that mean I'm about to get a notice under my door that our building's being sold to someone who thinks the boiler is someone else's problem? She asked. The accuracy of the fear hit him harder than Caldwell's slides. No, he said. It was, for the first time in a long time, an answer he intended to make true. It means I'm the guy who can order a new pump without asking permission. She blinked. Then thank you, she said stiffly, but I will pay my share of whatever it costs. I don't want favors. It's not a favor, he said. It's what the building owes you. She looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she said, do you want some coffee? It's instant, but it's hot. He almost refused. He had a desk full of artisanal beans uptown, but there was something in the way she offered, like she needed to give something back to balance the scales. That made him nod. I'd love some, he said. In the kitchen, she spooned granules into chip mugs. Maddie reappeared with socks only slightly less worn than the first pair, blankets still around her shoulders. She watched the two men by the radiator with suspicious, hopeful eyes. You're Santa's helper, she said suddenly. Miles choked on his first sip. I'm sorry, he asked. She pointed at the window. The big glass office, she said. You work there, right? Mom says the owner can see our building from his corner office. Miles glanced at Tessa. She shrugged. Everyone in town knows Harding keeps the lights on the longest, she said. You can't miss it. He lifted his cup. I work there, he admitted. Yes. Maddie edged closer. Did you get my letter? She asked. Gray eyes huge. For a second, the room tilted. He saw the envelope in his hand again. The careful looping letters. He saw the drawing of the glass rectangle and the little one beside it. He swallowed. Yes, he said, I did. Her face lit up like the tree in the square. Then you really are the Santa in the corner office, she declared. Told you he was real, she added to her mother. Tessa stared at him. You, she began. He lifted a shoulder. I opened a letter I wasn't supposed to, he said. It happens. You read my kid's mail, she asked sharply. Yes, he said, and I'm glad I did. He looked at Maddie. I'm sorry about your mom's cold feet, he said. We'll fix what we can down here. And the rest, she asked. He hesitated. The rest? He forced a small smile. The rest might take longer than a new pump. Maddie seemed to accept that. She sat on the floor near Carlos, chattering about school and snowmen while he worked. Tessa watched Miles over the rim of her mug. There was something about the way he looked around the apartment, not with disgust, not with condescension, but with a mix of assessment and something like responsibility. She didn't trust it. Not yet. But she couldn't deny that when the radiator sputtered to life an hour later and warmth began to creep into the room, the knot between her shoulders loosened a fraction. The Christmas tree lighting at Harding Tower was, as it had been every year, half community event, half corporate branding. In the lobby, garlands draped over railings. A 14-foot fir reached toward the second-floor balcony, strung with white lights and silver ornaments. There were trays of gingerbread cookies near the elevators, spiced cider in paper cups, and a local choir gathered near the revolving doors. Tuning up, Lena supervised a table of name tags and programs. Beside the sign that read Tenant Appreciation Night, a stack of invitations bore a simple message: join us for an evening of lights, music, and warmth. Families welcome. Maddie spotted the big tree through the glass long before Tessa did. Mom, she whispered, tugging her hand, that one is bigger than our whole kitchen. Most things are bigger than our whole kitchen, Tessa said, but she smiled despite herself. She'd almost thrown the invitation away when it arrived. Some part of her thought events like this weren't for people like them. They were for the condo owners, the law firms upstairs, the people whose coats didn't have patched elbows. But Maddie had pressed the embossed card to her heart. It says families. She'd pointed out, we're a family. So Tessa had dug out her one good dress and scrubbed the salt stains off their boots. Now, as they stepped into the lobby, warmth wrapped around them. The air smelled like cinnamon and pine. Mrs. Clark Lena asked, brightening. And Maddie, I'm glad you came. Maddie stared up at the stairway, eyes wide. Is the Santa here? She whispered. I think he's running late, Lena said with a conspiratorial wink. But the CEO will be out in a minute. That's almost the same thing. She handed Tessa 2 name tags. Tessa Clark, Maple Street tenant. Maddie Clark, Maple Street tenant. Tessa stuck them on reluctantly. They found a spot near the back as the choir began to sing. Angels we have heard on high. Maddie swayed a little to the music, fingers curled around her mother's. Tessa's gaze drifted to the front of the lobby, where a small platform had been set up. A microphone, a lectern, a switch wired to the tree lights. Ladies and gentlemen, the building manager called over the music. If I can have your attention for a moment. The room quieted. Thank you all for joining us, he said. It's my pleasure to introduce the man whose corner office has the best view in town, but who insists on coming down here where the real action is our CEO, Mr. Miles Harding. Applause rose. Tessa felt Maddie's hand tighten painfully on hers. Mom, Maddie hissed. Look! The man walking up to the microphone wore a dark suit and a red tie. His hair caught the lights, silver at the edges. He smiled at the crowd. For a second, Tessa's brain refused to match him with the man who'd knelt in their freezing living room in a wool cap and rolled shirt sleeves. Then he spoke. Thank you, he said, and she recognized the voice that had promised to order a new pump without permission. Her stomach dropped. You said you worked there, she whispered to herself. You didn't say you own it. Maddie practically vibrated. That's him, she stage whispered. That's him. Mom, the Santa helper. On stage, Miles looked over the crowd. His eyes caught on them. His expression shifted surprise, then something softer. Tonight, he said into the microphone, I could make a speech about growth and projections and the great year we've had. A polite laugh rippled through the audience. But if I've learned anything this month, he went on, it's that sometimes the most important things don't show up in spreadsheets. Sometimes they arrive as letters, written in purple marker, asking for something as simple and impossible as a warm house. Tessa's throat clenched. Maddie beamed. He's talking about us, she whispered. Shh, Tessa murmured. So, Miles said, instead of charts, I'm going to say this. Harding started as a company that put roofs over people's heads. It's easy, from a corner office, to forget the heads under those roofs. I don't want us to forget. Not this winter. Not any winter. He reached for the switch. Here's to light, he said, and to warmth. May we be generous with both. He flipped it. The tree blazed to life. The choir launched into the next carol. People clapped. Beside her, Maddie jumped up and down, delight bubbling out of her. Tessa couldn't seem to make her hands move. She watched him step off the platform, shake hands, accept congratulations. He moved like someone used to being at the center without wanting to be. Lena murmured something in his ear, nodding toward the back. His gaze followed, landed on Tessa and Maddie. He excused himself and made his way through the crowd. Hi, he said when he reached them, up close. The suit didn't make him look less like the man who'd drunk instant coffee at her chipped table. It just made the lines around his eyes sharper. Hi, Tessa said. Her voice was flat. Maddie hugged his leg. You did it, she said. The lights. I had help, he said, smiling down at her. Electricians, extensions cords. Very technical. Tessa kept her arms folded. So, she said slowly, you're not just sort of facilities. He winced. No, he said, I should have been clearer. You think she asked? There was no heat in her tone, just a dangerous coolness. I wasn't trying to lie, he said. When I came to check the heat, I wanted to see it for myself. I thought if I led with the word CEO, you'd slam the door. You're not wrong, she said. He took a breath. I'm the one who got your letter, he said quietly. The one to Santa. Her eyes flashed. She never meant it to land on your desk, Tessa said. She meant it for, I don't know, the universe. God. A man in a red suit. Not the person who can decide if we lose the roof over our heads. He felt that like a slap. I haven't decided that, he said. Haven't you? She asked. There's talk about selling the building. People hear things. Somebody on the third floor heard it on the radio. Some developer with a condo plan. You must know. He opened his mouth, closed it. We're discussing options, he said finally. Options, she repeated. That's a nice word for some of you won't live here much longer. He wanted to say that nothing was final, that letters in purple marker had weight, that board votes were not storms of fate. But the truth was that he had not yet stopped the train. He'd only stood on the tracks and thought about it. Her jaw tightened. I appreciated the hot coffee, she said, and the hot radiators. Really. But if all this, she gestured at the tree, the lobby, the warmth is just sampling the product before you tear it all down. I'd rather know now. It's not, he said. The protest sounded weak even to him. She shook her head. Come on. Maddie, she said. We've seen the tree. Maddie clung to his leg for a second longer. Are we still invited to the warm house, she asked him. Her eyes were so open. He crouched down to her level. You're invited wherever there's room for you, he said softly. That's my promise. Is it? Tessa asked. He looked up at her. Yes, he said, but she was already turning away. He watched them disappear into the crowd, the small hand in the larger one, both of them swallowed by coats and scarves and strangers. He felt absurdly like someone who'd been given a fragile gift and fumbled it. The letter was waiting outside his office the next morning. Lena found it first, leaning against the doorframe like a tired guest. It's from Maple Street, she said, handing it to him. He recognized the handwriting. Not Maddie's this time. Tessa's. Dear Mr. Harding, thank you for fixing the heat and for the invitation to last night's event. Maddie has never seen such a big tree. She won't stop talking about the cookies. I also know now who you are. I don't pretend to understand your world. I know our building is a line on a sheet somewhere, and lines move. Maybe you will sell it. Maybe you won't. Either way, Ram, that choice is more yours than mine. What I can choose is how much of my life I hand over to a story I didn't write. I don't want to be anyone's holiday anecdote. The single mom from the old building. The purple letter kid. I don't want my daughter's letter to become a marketing slide. So we'll be leaving Maple Street before we're told to go. We have friends in a cheaper motel. It's not much, but it's ours to decide. Please don't send anyone to talk us out of it. Put the money you'd spend on that towards replacing the rest of the pumps. The neighbors will need the heat more than we will. Thank you again for the warmth you already gave. Tessa Clark. He read it twice. Then he walked to the window. From here, the Maple Street building was just a shape, a row of squares. Somewhere in there, 4C was emptying. He imagined the snowman blanket folded into a trash bag, the chip mugs in a box, the radiator still ticking, stubbornly warm now, heating a room with no one in it. Something inside him refused, not just because of her, because of what it meant to let people like her keep walking away, believing that the only way to stay upright was to never lean on anyone. He held the letter from Maddie in one hand and Tessa's in the other. 2 pieces of paper, 2 different voices. The same plea, don't look away. He straightened. Lena, he called. I need the board. Today. Board meetings didn't usually happen this fast, but there are some days when winter storms and decisions move on the same kind of urgency. They gathered again around the table. Caldwell looked annoyed. Bad timing, he muttered. I have a flight. It won't take long, Miles said. He placed the 2 letters on the table, side by side. Before we talk numbers, he said, I'd like you to meet someone. He picked up the first letter and read, "Not everything, just enough. Dear Santa in the corner office, I just want a warm house where my mom can stop crying." He finished. "This came to my desk by accident," he said. From a child in the Maple Street complex, he picked up the second letter. "Her mother wrote this," he said, "explaining why they've decided to leave before we tell them to." He read parts of that one too. "I don't want to be anyone's holiday anecdote. I don't want my daughter's letter to become a marketing slide." He set them down. Caldwell's mouth tightened. "I'm sorry to hear the tenant is unhappy," he said, "but we can't run a company based on letters from children." "No, Miles said. "We run a company based on the trust that the roofs we provide aren't going to vanish the moment a better offer shows up." He tapped the Maple Street file. "This isn't just a drag on profits," he said. "It's a test of who we are, when we can sell it, cash out. Let Northbridge knock it down and build condos nobody there now will ever afford. We'll look great on paper for a year. Maybe two." He glanced around this table. "Or," he said, "we can decide that part of Harding's legacy is not leaving 62 families out in the snow. We can create a housing trust. We repair the building properly. We keep the rent within reach. We treat Maple Street as what it is, our responsibility." Silence. Caldwell looked like he had bitten into something sour. "And how exactly do you propose we fund this noble experiment?" he asked. Miles slid a folder forward. "I've run the numbers," he said. "We allocate a portion of this year's profits. I reduce my own salary and bonus. We restructure some of our more speculative projects." "You'd bankrupt yourself to keep a decaying building on the books?" Caldwell asked. "No," Miles said calmly. "I'll be just fine. I would, however, like to sleep at night without hearing purple ink scratching on paper every time the radiators knock." A couple of board members exchanged glances. "This is sentimentality," Caldwell said. "You're grief talking." Renee would have. Miles's jaw tightened. "Oh, don't," he said quietly. "Do not tell me what my wife would have wanted based on your balance sheets." Caldwell's eyes flashed. "You forget who backed you when you had nothing," he said. "I remember exactly who backed us," Miles said. "A woman who believed we could make money without pretending the people in our buildings were abstractions." He took a breath. "I'm not asking you to run a charity," he said. "I'm asking you to invest in long-term stability. Do you know how much turnover costs us? How much damage is done when tenants feel like ghosts? Maple Street can be a model. If it works, we replicate it. If it fails, I'll own that." He looked each board member in the eye. I am not selling it," he said. "If that means you want a new CEO, you can start that process. But as long as my name is on that corner office, I won't sign away those lives for a prettier slide deck." The room held its breath. Caldwell leaned back slowly. "I never thought I'd see the day you put people before profit," he said. "I've been doing that quietly for years," Miles said. "You just weren't looking." One of the other directors cleared her throat. "I've run housing trusts in other cities," she said. "They're not as radical as you're making them sound. Caldwell, with the right structure, they're solid. I'm willing to back this on a trial basis." Another nodded. "I'd rather have one building we can be proud of than two we feel ambiguous about," he said. Caldwell's gaze moved between them, calculating. He saw the votes hardening. "This will be on you," he said to Miles. "I know," Miles replied. Caldwell sighed. "Fine," he said. "We hold the property. You establish your trust. But if this tanks, I will say I told you so at every opportunity." "Deal?" Miles said. He gathered the letters carefully. As the board dispersed, Lena stepped close. "You know," she said quietly, "if this works, we'll have a waiting list of people lining up to write to Santa." He smiled, just a little. "Let's make sure the first letter doesn't regret it," he said. The cemetery was almost pretty in the snow. Renee had liked it here. Quiet, trees, the river in the distance. Miles brushed a thin layer of frost off the headstone with his gloved hand. Renee Caldwell Harding, beloved wife, daughter, friend, she loved warm rooms and open doors. He sat on the bench beside it. The yellow sweater lay folded in his lap. He set the 2 letters on the stone. I did something impulsive today, he said, his breath puffed white. Caldwell thinks I've lost my mind, he went on. He might be right. He picked up Maddie's letter. She wrote to Santa. He said, but I was the one who opened it. I don't know what that makes me. A thief. A substitute. He smiled faintly. We were supposed to have a little girl, he said. Remember you said she'd have curls. You started the sweater and then you didn't get to finish it. He looked out at the gray sky. I shut everything down after you left, he admitted. Every door, every window. I thought if I let any new voices in, I'd be betraying you. But it turns out, pretending not to hear them was worse. He pulled a folded, worn piece of paper from his coat pocket. He'd found it in a box last week, tucked between recipes and old rental contracts. Renee's handwriting. If I don't make it, don't you dare close that big stubborn heart of yours. It read, don't turn our company into a machine that eats people. And please, if some child someday needs a home, don't let grief make you say no. Love is not a betrayal. It's a continuation. He read it aloud, his voice thick. I think this is you saying, for God's sake, Miles, stop using my ghost as an excuse, he said. The wind sighed through the bare branches as if in agreement. He refolded the note, tucked it away. I've started a housing trust, he told the stone. I'm going to fix Maple Street. I might screw it up. I'm going to try anyway. He paused. And there's someone, he added, 2 someones. Really? He smiled, small and real. A girl who writes letters and a woman who would rather move to a worse motel than be someone's pity project. He said, they're complicated, brave, infuriating. He laid his hand on the cold top of the headstone. If I bring them into my life, he whispered, it won't be to replace you. It'll be because you taught me how to hold people without owning them. The silence around him felt less like emptiness and more like blessing. He picked up the sweater and the letters. Snowflakes landed on the yellow wool and melted. Finding them took less than a day. People in small towns notice when their neighbors disappear. Mrs. Patel at the laundry told Carlos, who told Lena, who told Miles, that the single mom and her girl from 4C had checked into the Evergreen Motel out on Route 7. 2 nights paid up, Mrs. Patel had said, shaking her head. After that, who knows? That night, snow fell thick and fast. The Evergreen's neon sign flickered red and green. Half the letters burned out, so it read, Ever Enmo. Miles pulled into the lot, tires crunching. His breath clouded as he walked to the office. The clerk glanced up from a portable TV. We're full, he said. I'm not looking for a room, Miles replied. I'm looking for a guest. Tessa Clark, her daughter. The clerk hesitated. You family, he asked. Not yet, Miles said before he could stop himself. The man shrugged and pointed down the row. Last one on the left, he said. Heater's spotty. They're tough. That one. Refused extra blankets unless they were free. Miles nodded and walked toward the last door. Light spilled from a gap in the curtains. He knocked. Shuffling, the lock clicked. Tessa opened the door with the chain still on. Her hair was down, falling over her shoulders. She wore an old sweatshirt and leggings, feet bare on the faded carpet. She stared at him. What are you doing here, she asked. I came to bring you something, he said. If it's regret, you can keep it, she replied. He almost smiled. Can I come in, he asked. She glanced over her shoulder. Maddie was asleep on the bed, sprawled diagonally, mouth slightly open, hugging the snowman blanket. Talk quietly, Tessa said. She unhooked the chain and let him in. The room smelled of stale smoke under a layer of citrus cleaner. Miles took in the sagging mattress, the dripping sink, the heater rattling under the window. He turned to face her. You were right, he said without preamble, about not wanting to be a story I trot out to make myself feel better. About Maple Street being a line item I could move with a pen. She crossed her arms, hugging herself. I didn't write that letter to guilt you, she said. I wrote it so I could leave with my head up. I know, he said. That's why it worked. He pulled a folder from his coat. He opened it on the small table by the window, sliding it toward her. She hesitated, then stepped closer. The top document bore the Harding letterhead. Maple Street Housing Trust. Policy outline. Underneath, bullet points. Renovation schedule. Rent stabilization. Tenant Advisory Council. She flipped through. "You're not selling," she said slowly. "I'm not selling," he said. "We're fixing. Properly this time. New boilers, roof repairs, insulation. Not patchwork." She turned another page. At the back was a simple letter addressed to Tessa and Maddie Clark. She read, "You will not be evicted from Maple Street. Your tenancy is safe for as long as you choose to stay and can meet the rent, which will not be raised beyond what the trust deems fair. I am sorry for the fear my silence caused. If you wish to return, your apartment will be there. If you do not, I will respect that. Either way, your letter changed more than you know." Miles Harding. Her eyes moved from the paper to his face. "Why?" she asked. "Why go to all this trouble? You could have sold the building and never thought about us again." "Because every time I tried to sign the sale, I heard your daughter asking Santa for warm feet," he said. "Because I've been hiding behind the phrase good business for too long. Because my wife didn't marry a man who would bulldoze people to buy a new yacht." "You have a yacht?" she asked automatically. "No," he said. "I have a very confused board and a father-in-law who thinks I've lost my mind. But I can live with that." She sat down slowly on the edge of the second bed. The heater clanked. "Why come here?" she asked. "Why not just mail this?" "Because you asked me not to send anyone to talk you out of leaving," he said. "And I needed you to know I heard that, even as I ignored it." He took a breath. "I'm not here to drag you back," he said. "I'm here to offer something else." He pulled another sheet from the folder. It was a short contract. Guest house caretaker. Seasonal. "It's going to take a while to get Maple Street into the shape it should have been in," he said. "In the meantime, there's a little guest house on my property that hasn't seen much life lately. It needs someone to look after it. Cook. Keep the place from echoing." She stared at the paper. "You want to hire me," she said, "to cook and clean in your guest house?" "Yes," he said. "With pay, with clear hours, with an end date. Not as charity, as a job. If you take it, you and Maddie can stay there through the winter, safe and warm, rent-free, because that's part of the compensation." "And if I say no," she asked. "Then I drive back through the snow," he said. "Maple Street waits for you with fixed heat if you ever want it. The guest house stays empty. And I hope you find somewhere that feels like home." She looked down at Maddie, sleeping. Her daughter's cheeks were pink from the fluctuating, hitting heat. Socks twisted around her ankles. "You think you can swoop in here and fix everything?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "I think I can fix a boiler, offer a contract, and tell you that your choices won't be used against you later." He held her gaze. "I don't want you to owe me anything you can't put on a ledger," he said. "If someday there's anything more between us than a tenant and a stubborn landlord, it will be because you choose it, not because I covered your gas bill." Her throat worked. "You talk like you rehearsed that," she said. "I did," he admitted. "On the drive over. In my head. It sounded better there." Despite herself, a tiny smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You really started a housing trust because of a letter in purple marker?" she asked. "Partly," he said. "Partly because of a woman who refused to be turned into a bullet point. And partly because my wife asked me, from beyond the grave, to stop being a coward." "That's a lot of ghosts to bring into one motel room," Tessa said. "They've all seen worse," he replied. Silence settled. The heater hummed. Outside, snow tapped against the thin window. She picked up the caretaker contract again. It was simple, clear. Start and end dates, duties, compensation. No fine print that felt like shackles. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "we're there until spring. After that, we go back to Maple Street or somewhere else. No pressure to upgrade our lives into something that looks good in your annual report." "No pressure," he said. If all this ever ends up in an annual report, you have my permission to throw something heavy at me." She snorted. "Okay," she said. "We'll take the job for the winter." Relief swept through him. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "You've never seen me burn a casserole." He smiled. "I like my casseroles with character," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Character is what we call it when things get too dark," she said. His smile widened. "I'll keep that in mind," he said. She signed. He drove them back through streets muffled by snow. Maddie half asleep in the back seat, clutching her blanket. As they turned up the long drive to his property, the house came into view. Warm windows glowed through the trees. Beside it, the smaller guest house stood like a cousin, a little worn, a little shy, waiting. Tessa stared at it. "Feels like a movie set," she murmured. "Wait until Maddie sees the kitchen," he said. "It's terrible. You'll have a field day judging my taste in appliances." She glanced at him. "This doesn't mean you get to be Santa," she said. "You're just a guy with a guest house and poor judgment in tenants." "I'll take it," he said softly. The guest house smelled of dust and pine cleaner. By the time they had carried in their bags and found fresh sheets in the linen closet, Maddie was fully awake and buzzing. "There's stairs," she exclaimed, "and 2 bedrooms and a bathtub that's not in the same room as the kitchen." "High living," Tessa said, trying to keep her voice light. Miles watched them explore, a careful distance away. He showed Tessa how to work the stove, the old gas range humming with surprising competence. "There's a pantry," he said, "stocked. You're free to rearrange it." She opened the door, eyes widening at the rows of cans, boxes, jars. "This is more food than I've seen in one place outside a store," she murmured. "It gets lonely on shelves," he said. "Use it." That night, after Maddie had fallen asleep in the bed under the eaves, clutching a stuffed bear, Lena had slipped into her arms as they left the office. Tessa stood in the small guest house kitchen. The overhead light was soft. The old clock ticked. She leaned against the counter, mug of tea between her hands, and watched the rise and fall of her daughter's sleeping form through the doorway. In the main house, across the yard, she could see a single window lit. A shadow moved past it. Miles at his own kitchen sink, maybe, rinsing a plate in a house that had been too quiet for too long. They didn't wave. They didn't speak. They just existed, for a moment, in parallel boxes of light, snow falling quietly between them. It was the stillest feeling she'd had in years. Not empty, just paused. Like the moment before a song begins again after a long, hard silence. Winter settled in. Snowstorms came and went, coating the trees and the guest house roof in thick white. Tessa fell into a rhythm she hadn't known she needed. Mornings, she walked Maddie down the lane to the school bus, their boots making twin tracks in the snow. Daytimes, she split her time between the guest house and the main kitchen, cooking meals she hadn't had the space or ingredients for in years. Real food, roasted vegetables, stews that simmered for hours, bread that made the whole house smell like safety. Miles adjusted to coming home to those smells. He found himself lingering in the doorway, watching Tessa move between stove and counter, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back. Sometimes Maddie would sit at the table with colored pencils, narrating everything as if life needed a commentary track. "This is the snow house," she'd say, drawing. "Here's Mom. Here's me. Here's Miles with his big head because he thinks too much." "You're not wrong," he'd say. Evenings, the 3 of them would sometimes gather in the main house living room by the fireplace. At first, it was practical, discussing repairs at Maple Street, budgeting recipes. Then it became something else. Maddie would fall asleep sprawled between them on the couch, head on her mother's thigh, feet in Miles's lap. They would talk about nothing and everything. About the books Tessa used to read before life got too crowded. About how Miles had once wanted to be a carpenter instead of a landlord. About Renee. "I don't know where to put her in all this," Tessa admitted one night, staring into the flames. "I don't want to feel like I'm taking something that belonged to her." "You're not," he said. He looked up at the mantel. A photo of Renee smiled back, laughing, hair blown by wind, a mug of cocoa in her hands. I thought for a long time that any new happiness would be stealing from her, he said, but she left instructions. He pulled the worn note from his pocket and handed it over. Tessa read, "Don't you dare close that big stubborn heart of yours. Love is not a betrayal. It's a continuation." Her eyes stung. "She sounds bossy," Tessa said. He said, "It's why I miss her so much." They sat there, three people and a ghost, feeling the shape of something that might, if given room and time, become a family. One Saturday, a week before Christmas, Maddie added a new drawing to the house. It was a busy morning. Tessa was in full production mode in the kitchen, flour on her apron, rolling out dough for pies. Miles was at the table sorting through repair invoices for Maple Street. The radio played carols softly in the background. Maddie sat on the floor with a fistful of crayons and a sheet of paper. "You can't see it yet," she announced, "but it's going to be amazing." "Nothing but confidence from the artist," Miles said. She stuck her tongue out at him affectionately. Half an hour later, she held up the finished picture. It showed the main house, snow piled around it, a string of lights on the roof. Stick figures stood in front, three of them, hand in hand. Underneath, in careful letters, "Our Forever Snow House." She had labeled each person, Mom, me, Miles. Something in his chest flipped. Tessa took the paper gingerly. "Wow," she said. "Look at our noses." "They're perfect," Maddie said. "Flat like Frosties." "Where are my wrinkles?" Miles asked lightly. "I feel like you're erasing important detail." "You don't have wrinkles," Maddie informed him. "You just have thinking lines." She darted away before either adult could answer. A few minutes later, Tessa realized the drawing and Maddie were no longer in the kitchen. She wiped her hands, heart ticking faster, and went looking. She found them in the living room. Maddie was standing on a chair, tongue poking out in concentration as she taped the drawing to the wall. Right beside the framed photo of Renee. "Maddie," Tessa began, alarmed. "Maybe don't put—" She stopped. Miles was standing in the doorway, watching. He'd gone very still. "I wanted her to have friends," Maddie said, taping down the last corner. She looked lonely. Tessa moved toward the wall, hands up. "I can move it," she said quickly. I didn't tell her to do this." Miles shook his head. "Don't," he said. He walked closer. Side by side, the photo and the drawing made an odd, tender pairing. One frozen moment from a life cut short. One messy, hopeful sketch of a life still being drawn. "You don't mind?" Tessa asked softly. He thought of Renee's letter, of her mocking his stubbornness, urging him toward warmth. He thought of how empty that wall had felt for 3 years. "I think she'd be glad," he said. He reached out and straightened the tape. Maddie beamed. "Now we're all in the same room," she said. Then she hopped down and ran back to the kitchen, already thinking about cookies. Tessa lingered. Behind her, she could feel the weight of his gaze. "I'm sorry," she said. "If it's too much, I can—" "It's not," he said. "It's right." He hesitated. "Come with me a second," he said. He led her to his office, a room lined with shelves and a big desk that had seen too many late nights. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I've been writing and rewriting this for weeks," he said. "I was going to read it to you over dinner. That feels overly dramatic now, so I'm just going to hand it to you." He held it out. She took it, fingers brushing his. "Dear Tessa, you once said you didn't want to be a story I told to make myself feel better. So I'm going to try very hard not to do that here. I started a housing trust because your daughter's letter showed me exactly who I was failing. I offered you the guest house because I couldn't stand the idea of you freezing in a motel while I slept under too many blankets. But somewhere between broken radiators and burned casseroles, you and Maddie became more to me than tenants or responsibilities. You've turned this house back into a home. You've challenged me, rolled your eyes at me, filled my kitchen with cinnamon and my evenings with laughter I thought I'd buried with Renee. I loved my wife. I always will. Nothing will change that. I love you too. Not because you remind me of her, but because you don't. You are you, stubborn, fierce, funny, braver than you know. If that love is something you want, I'm here. If it isn't, I will still fix Maple Street. I will still keep my promises. I am not asking you to be grateful. I am asking if you would consider staying, not as a guest, not as an obligation, as part of this forever snow house Maddie has drawn us into. Whatever your answer, thank you for knocking on my door, even if you didn't know that you did. Miles, she read it once. Then again, her eyes burned. You write like a lawyer and a poet had a very earnest baby, she said when she could trust her voice. He huffed out a laugh. I'll take that as a compliment, he said. It kind of is, she admitted. She folded the letter slowly. I don't know how to do this, she said. Be with someone who has this much power, money, history, a father-in-law who thinks I'm a liability. I don't know how to do half of it either, he said, but I'm willing to learn. With you. As long as you tell me when I'm screwing up. She looked at him, really looked, at the lines carved by grief and responsibility, and now something like hope. Come outside, she said. What he asked, she tucked the letter into her pocket. Bring your coat, she said. On the front porch, snow drifted down in lazy spirals. The forest edge glowed faint orange from the town lights beyond. Tessa stood facing him, breath fogging between them. She reached for his hand. It was colder than she expected. He'd forgotten gloves. She lifted it and placed it flat against her chest, over her heart. He could feel it, thumping steady and fast under his palm. If you promise, she said quietly, that when things get hard, and they will, you won't turn us into a PR shield or a liability on a risk report. If you promise you'll treat us like people you love, not assets you manage. Her jaw trembled. Then we'll stay, she finished. We'll figure the rest out from there. He swallowed around the lump in his throat. I promise, he said. Say it like you mean it, she said. He smiled, small and sure. I promise, he repeated. I will mess up. I will say the wrong thing. I will forget to buy milk. But I will not reduce you or Maddie to bullet points. Ever. Snow clung to his lashes. She laughed, wiped it away with her thumb. You really are terrible at metaphors, she said. So teach me better ones, he replied. She stepped closer. He lowered his hand from her chest, sliding it around her back. The first kiss was careful, not because they were unsure of each other, but because they both knew exactly how much weight it carried. It tasted like snow and cinnamon and the corner of something new. Inside, through the window, the drawing on the wall watched them. 3 stick figures under a crooked roof, under the gaze of a woman in a photograph who seemed, just for a second, to be smiling a little wider. Winter turned to spring. The housing trust sent crews to Maple Street. Scaffolding went up. New pipes snaked through old walls. Insulation filled the spaces where cold had slipped in for decades. Tenants grumbled about the noise and then, slowly, grumbled less as drafts disappeared and leaks stopped. Tessa and Maddie moved back eventually. Not because they had to, but because Maple Street, for all its scars, was where their friends were. The guest house remained theirs too. In a way, a place for weekends, for holidays, for when the city felt too small and the forest too inviting. A year later, under a sky full of falling snowflakes and strung lights, they gathered in the clearing behind the main house. Someone had dragged benches from storage. A local minister stood under a simple arch of evergreen branches. Tessa wore a dress the color of cream, boots peeking out from underneath. Maddie wore a wreath of pine needles and cranberries in her hair and took her job of flower girl very seriously. Miles stood at the end of the makeshift aisle, heart hammering harder than any boardroom confrontation had ever made it. Caldwell sat stiffly in the front row, scarf wound tight, eyes unreadable. When Tessa reached the arch, Maddie slipped her hand into Miles' free one. Are you ready to be our forever snowman? She whispered. He looked down at her, then at Tessa, then at the cluster of faces Lena, Carlos, Maple Street tenants bundled in their best coats. The world felt astonishingly full. Yes, he said, I think I am. After the vows, after the rings, after the first kiss that tasted like laughter and tears, Maddie tugged on Caldwell's sleeve. Grandpa, she said. He blinked. I'm not, he began. "You're Renee's dad," she said, "and Miles is something. That makes you mine too. It's math." There was no arguing with math delivered in that tone. Slowly, awkwardly, he patted her head. "We'll see about that," he said gruffly, which everybody, including him, understood to mean yes. Inside the house, on a wall near the fireplace, three things hung in a neat row. Renee's photo, Maddie's drawing of the forever snow house, and in a simple frame, the original letter. "Dear Santa," in the corner office with the big glass window. Sometimes guests would stop and read it, smiling, wiping at their eyes. Most days, it faded into the background like all talismans do when they've done their work. On a quiet night, long after the last wedding guests had gone and the snow had settled, Tessa found Miles in the living room, staring at the wall. "You okay?" she asked, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. He covered her hands with his. "I was just thinking," he said. "I used to believe miracles were big things. Cures. Lottery tickets. Now I'm starting to think they're just pieces of paper. Tiny ones, asking for warm feet." She rested her chin between his shoulder blades. "You answered," she said. "So did you," he replied. They stood there, watching the snow fall beyond the window. In the glass, their reflections blurred into one shape. Warm, together, in a world where letters mattered, where roofs meant more than rent, and where one corner office had finally learned that the view wasn't for looking down, it was for looking out.